You're listening to episode 720 of a VerySpatial podcast, August 20th, 2023.
Hello and welcome to a VerySpatial podcast. I'm Jesse.
I'm Sue.
I'm Barb. And this is Frank.
And this week we're going to do something. We'll figure it out. But first we have some newses. First, there is I think it's still a hurricane. No, it's down a tropical storm.
Already? It was close.
70 mile per hour winds. Yeah. That's tropical storm, right? Or is that still category 1?
All the news is saying hurricane.
Okay.
But yeah, if it dropped, it dropped like in the last 12 hours. It's been very...
Yeah, I was just looking like 5 minutes ago. It was 70 mile per hour winds, but I'm blanking on...
that might 74 is the cutoff, so it has dropped below.
Okay.
If that's the new advisory.
So then that's... So, Hurricane Hillary going to hit the west coast.
Of the U.S.
Yes. Thank you.
Which happens.
Yeah. It's extremely unusual. But I mean, it's just
rare that it ever happens.
I think that they said that since we've been keeping track, there has been no recorded hurricanes. And I'm not sure about tropical storms.
I believe there was, yes.
Okay.
But it's
not since the 1930s for the tropical storm?
Something like that. It's rare for those steering mechanisms to all come together for it to head this direction. So a lot of potential for heavy rain and other things, even if it's not necessarily making landfall as a hurricane, it's still got a lot of energy with it and a lot of potential effects. So
it's making a beeline for San Diego. I mean,
they are getting wet right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really know. Thinking about the architecture of San Diego, I mean, they're built for earthquakes, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of legal requirements within California more broadly, and certainly in San Francisco and places like that. But I think overall California to build so that they can handle that. I'm wondering how much, I'm kind of curious what the connection is or how much that'll help them in a hurricane situation.
Does anybody remember kind of the top points of Santa Ana winds? I mean, they're kind of tropical storm force, I think, sometimes.
It's a good question. Let's see what Santa Ana.
Well, they get pretty high. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the actual wind speed, but.
So, I think that, there's some expectation of that type of wind event, but the water event's kind of what I'm worried about, because of course that'll help. This rain will help some of that ice pack that built up in this massive snow year of the last winter, help that melt as well. So you're going to get the rain plus a little bit more melt happening at the same time.
Yes, and there's a lot of rugged, hilly terrain where you're going to get runoff and all kinds of stuff. So
landslides, flooding, flash flooding. Yeah,
I mean, there's going to have that. That's going to be, I was just thinking about the Gaslight District, where the UC always happens. That's going to be it's right on the coast, essentially. It's a bay. So that's going to get pummeled.
I think whenever I was looking, it looked like the eye was going to kind of go over Tijuana so that it might be the western quarter. And so it depends on the tide and how close the eye wall is as to whether or not it's going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, so just frame reference, I just looked it up because I was curious. Santa Ana's typically get upwards of a maximum of 40 miles per hour wind speeds, which is, 64 kilometers per hour, if that's your, metric. The Hurricane Hillary or Tropical Storm Hillary, whatever it is now, it's moving at about 21 miles per hour as of the recording of this, and its max wind speeds hit about double that, 80 miles per hour.
But it's, of course, the rain event that a lot of people are talking about the most.
Which with tropical storms, as we can say from the East Coast, that's often where the real impact is. So hopefully everybody can stay safe and heed any warnings that are local.
Have we ever been in San Diego when it rained? I don't even remember if it's ever rained over there.
Not heavy rain, but I mean, a scattered shower type of thing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so weird to even think about rain there at all, much less this level of rain. So, that's going to be, pardon the pun, eye-opening for a lot of people.
First up-ish in the news, as opposed to current events, Planet has completed its acquisition recently that is going to help grow the Earth data platform, and they acquired Synergize. We talk about all the different constellations and how they're having an impact on how we're getting information, and whether we're talking about back when Maxar was buying, groups like Digital Globe and others, or something like this where Planet is acquiring Synergize, we, see strengthening of these platforms. And in many cases, it makes it easier for us to get access to data. But at the same time, it kind of does dilute the competition, I guess.
Business acquisitions are important, but not terribly interesting. I think we tend to pay attention to end products and not who owns the end product.
In the case of Synergize, actually, Sentinel Hub was what they were known for.
Next up the news, PostGIS 3.4.0 has been released. It was earlier this month. Oh, it was just last week. Okay. And so if you are using PostGIS, then, head over, check out the new version, and good luck. Well,
and I think that just the continuing support and updating and thriving community in PostGIS and other open source in the geospatial, it just speaks to the dedication of the community to keep these things up to date, current, and usable. Because as you say, Frank, it really is about the time, and it's about the time and making infrastructure, access available to those who can't really, or for whatever reason, do not participate kind of on the sort of commercial end of it.
I think that the big dividing line here, and this is nothing new, people have been saying this for literally almost decades now, but the big dividing line here is that it's not for the new person, really. You've got to have some experience and some comfort level of getting your hands really dirty to get it to work, and you don't have the fallback of 1-800 tech support fix it, which it can be daunting for a lot of people. And you just got to dig in there and find stuff. Next up in the news, I thought this was kind of neat. Microsoft's AI has suggested a food bank as a cannot miss tourist spot in, I believe, in Canada, in Ottawa, Canada. And it's kind of interesting because we're moving into using some of these technologies like AI to generate content and meaningful content. And in this particular case, clearly a food bank is probably not a particularly meaningful tourist destination for most people.
Well, I think it's what it said about visiting the location that was really what caused the issue.
Well, there's that too. I mean, how it describes it is kind of, it hits all the right accurate points with having no real meaning or use. It's just
telling you to come hungry.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a particularly noteworthy. I mean, I'm sure that there are, specialty interests that would find this particular bank interesting because it's been around for a while and it does have some historical context. But for the general tourist, I don't know how to make it the number 3 tourist destination, which it did. And the text that it wrote is kind of inappropriate. Yeah, I'm being generous. Okay. It's very inappropriate. But the point is that it's kind of interesting that it's inferring, to me at least, it's inferring some inappropriate or inaccurate or I'm not sure what I'm grasping for words here, placial understanding from a spatial bit of data, right? I mean, that exists on a space, and it pulled out some textual information from a website or something like that about the food bank, and it's therefore inferring some placial interest that just really it shouldn't have inferred. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting little bit of attempt to use AI for more quantitative mashup of place and not even knocking it out of the dugout.
Well, I think among the many things that we're going to continue to have the debate as AI develops, right, is certainly things like context and tone and nuance and all that are not what these AI structures are about. At least not now and not yet. All right, there are some specialty kinds of things that might, but this is an example, right, where you just let things go, and it comes back to the interpretation by the humans and that understanding, I think.
Okay, finally in the news, a big birthday, a shout out to the folks over at OpenStreetMap who are now 19 years old, and they would like you to help them keep going with a new kind of push for funding. There was a couple of social media posts and things like that, but it's one of those things that we all take advantage of it. We know that all these big companies should be giving a lot more money because of all the things that they're getting out of it. But it doesn't always work out that way. So if you have the chance, head over to their online fundraising campaign, which you can get to on the OpenStreetMap blog, and, help if you can, either through editing your local area or a little cash never hurts.
Yeah, and just recently, believe it or not, I've discovered OSM buildings and have been using that data set for some things. So, belatedly, but very useful.
In that vein, if you don't actively use OpenStreetMap, you should start. It's amazing, the data that's in there. The great thing is that you can make it better, as Jesse said, so you can go out and do that. But there's some astounding data sets in there, like buildings, that are just great to kind of double check against. Particularly, I think, in rural areas where you have the potential for more public mapping. And if there's not good mapping, again, go out and do it yourself. There's no reason you can't.
It's a great way to get together with your service organization if you work with one, if you're looking for a group activity that you can really feel like you've had an impact on your local community or the world.
And that's it for the news.
So this week, we're going to take a second to talk about, I don't know, it's August. It's that back to school time, both for K-12 in the U.S. and universities in the U.S. And, many places around the world keep that kind of same summers off, go back in the fall type of schedule. So it's kind of that back to school time of year for many parts of the world. Now, there's some that do a much better job of going year round and just having smaller breaks throughout, which I applaud and think that
it's not the worst idea. I just could put it out there for the people who are listening. It's not the worst idea.
Yeah. I mean, look at the places in the U.S. who did that. I'm not sure how many are still doing it, but they seem to be doing pretty well whenever they were doing it back in the 90s and early 2000s. But that's me, But yeah, I mean, what is it that we might do to help our community be better represented, more visible as we go back into this school year to get those students who are coming up, aware of geography? A lot of countries, of course, do it a lot better than we do. What might we take away from them, or what can we, bring to the table ourselves?
Well, I think one of the things, because I've been thinking about this as well, and of course in the classroom, GIS is basically where I get to see the most students. But I think the thing that I've begun doing and want to continue doing is having those hands-on, those aha moments with GIS and actually seeing the impact, right? Really showing whenever possible the real-world impact of seeing geospatial data and analysis, right? Trying it yourself and seeing, look, I can see this, and I can see other people's examples. So showing, great examples of how it's GIS and geospatial and geography more broadly are used to help us solve problems, and then connect that into something that the students are doing, and they can also see that same thing because then they made the connection, right? This is for real, because more and more, as I think in the university sphere, I think our students are coming in and they want to see ways they can impact the world, right? Even if it's a small way, they want to feel like they can make a difference. And so I think that's something that we can really pull on, because geography and GIS and all the things that we work with, they do make a difference. They often are crucial tools, whether it's geographic concepts and just understanding the world, or applied specifically in the GIS and computing sense. I think that making those connections more explicit with examples, that connect with the students of maybe current events that are going on, or something they're interested in. I think I can do better at that, and that's really what I've been trying to focus on as I get ready for yet another school year.
I recently spoke at the West Virginia Technology and Education Conference, and I had a lot of educators and others come up to me because I gave a session on how to set up a GIS lab. And a lot of talk centered, just the things you talk about with software and computers. But it got into, I did an AI generation of what does a computer lab look like, and it just looked very sad with fluorescent lighting and the old way, the way you think of it. And one of the things I think that we could do is there are teachers and a lot of librarians, a lot of people that are just being given a room and they're being told, set up your lab. And also don't just set it up. I don't know if you know this, but in today's world in education, there's a lot more push for making something pretty, making it Instagrammable, like to show what you're doing. There are resources that teachers need that we have And, what computer equipment do you need, what software, what grants are out there, what funding's out there, but just the help with how do you set something up so it's usable, if anyone had extra tables or things that look nice. And I realized that there's more than just the stuff we talk about. There's the actual concrete, okay, I've been given a room. I don't even know where I start. And that's something where I think a lot of us can say, okay, I've been there. I know where you start. It's not as intimidating as you think. Here are some things you can do. And then, like Sue said, showing that outcome in, hey, and we've got these maps, posters, things you can put up that will get people excited, because it's never fun to be in the lab that's just got some computers at weird tables with fluorescent lighting, no big table to put out a map to do workspace on, to talk with a whiteboard. And as Frank and I were discussing, the modern GIS, which everyone's been talking about, partially includes that ambiance, the geospatial ambiance, or just the feeling of I'm doing something and it's geospatial.
I mean, we do dope stuff with some really dope toys, and they're fun. I mean, and use whatever upgraded cool lingo there may be, but on the one hand, I think Sue's absolutely right that there are people who want to positively impact the communities that they come from, that they live in, that they move through, and that's great. But then there are other people that haven't quite gotten there in their head yet necessarily. They're trying to figure out where they're at in the world before they figure out necessarily how to impact the world around them, and that's fine too. But for them, a lot of times we can show them really cool stuff. And I don't care who you are. I've yet to find very few people have I ever experienced. I show them a map and they go, whatever map. Maps are kind of cool on the onset, right? And in particular, if they're old looking maps, that people just kind of find them fascinating. And that is, to my mind, one of the most benign, boring interpretations or implementations of geography and GIS available, although it's the most dominant without a doubt. So there's lots of things we can engage with. We've got drones, we've got virtual reality, we've got augmented reality, we got location-based services, we got going out and walking around with a cell phone and collecting data and uploading data. We got all this cloud stuff. We got, really cool visualizations we can do on the computer in 3D. I mean, amazing things. And I think that if we show that we can do cool stuff in geography and GIS, particularly GIS, then in my experience, that gets people's interest, and they go, oh, that's neat. I want to do something with that myself. And then you whip on the projections and all that more boring stuff.
No, you hold off on the projections.
Right.
You wait till they're a captive audience.
Right. And then they go, I can't figure out how this works. And you go, well, interesting enough. Yeah. Let's talk boring math.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you say particularly GIS, but I say particularly geography, because it is, of course, where we want them to take the GIS. GIS is ubiquitous. It is across all disciplines. And we want everybody in every discipline to understand how it can help them and utilize it, that it's not Google Maps, that it's not, just flying the drone by hand and getting a snapshot of something, but that you can do so much more with these tools to be able to, do whatever it is you're doing if you take that geographic, that cartographic, maybe even perspective with it. And so, getting that idea of spatial questions, the idea of understanding the past of the place to understand how we're going to potentially use it now and how we might need to plan it in the future. All of these things, I think, are really what gives geography, the firm basis that is every other discipline that we steal and just put our spin of where onto that, which is awesome.
I also think, too, that as we're doing that, right, we can give them examples to show that they actually, in their minds, can already identify with geographic concepts, or, as they inhabit the world around them, they get it. And I was thinking, right, a very simple example in an intro class coming in, whether it's GIS or just geography, on, how you can understand what people are trying to say through the things they do to the landscape. And the example I give is fences, right? Fences. Like, when we think of a fence and you ask them, what's a fence for? Right? It's to create a boundary. It's to keep things in or keep things out. And like, well, what about all the people that just put like a little line of fence in their yards, right? There's no way that's keeping anybody out. Or they'll put a gate up on their sidewalk, but yet there's no fence on either side, right? So it gets them thinking about the meaning, right? We do things intentionally, But what might be the meaning then? If it doesn't serve the generic function that we think of for a fence, what are they trying to say? And then they'll kind of ponder it. And they're like, yeah, and then think a little bit deeper and say, well, maybe they're trying to say, hey, this is my my space. Or sometimes I had a couple that kind of said, well, having a fence and having that kind of property was a statement about where you were in the world. Right, that's kind of how they see it. So just even having a section of fence, which, as they pointed out, is kind of expensive, shows that you see yourself as aspiring. And that was interesting because I hadn't really thought about it in that sense. But just one of many, many examples you can use. But then being able to say, all right, I can understand that. I can read how people alter their landscapes and consciously or unconsciously send messages, and we receive them and interpret it in our worldview. But those kinds of things are powerful, and then you can broaden out from that to all kinds of things that you're doing with the technology in other geographic or geospatial contexts.
And see, this all fits really well with wrapping it all up into Geography Awareness Week or Geo Week 2023, where the theme this year is the power of place, and can incorporate a lot of what we've been discussing now and in past episodes.
This week at Fairmont State, we actually had professional development this past week, and I did give a presentation about analysis. And I use this phrase a lot because I like it, obviously, and I think it does a pretty good job of hooking people in, and it's in their imaginations. They don't always follow through with it, but it does hook them in. Which is, I say, look, if something takes place somewhere on the planet, then we can analyze it using GIS or geography, at least at some level. We can understand it a little better, and everything takes place somewhere. And I find that usually when I say that, you can see in people's eyes, they start thinking about, well, how do the things that I do, where does that take place? And how does that impact it? How does that change it as opposed to other places that I'm used to experiencing? And I've yet to find a single discipline that I couldn't link to geography in some way to understand some part of it, not all of it, not everything, not maybe even the most important things, but you can at least understand at some level where it has an impact and has an influence on some of the outcomes. And I think that gets people excited about it. The tricky bit, I think, there is how do we marry that recognition with further engagement? And that's the part I struggle with a bit more.
And of course, that's thanks to our K-12 system not actually saying, oh yeah, that's geography in the US. And so those of you listening from the UK or Germany or China or Japan, you're like, wait, not why do you have to talk about this?
It's like, not the US.
Well, I think
everybody
there's
else gets it
struggles
right.
too.
Yeah.
Well, there's struggles, but they at least are taught that that's geography.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is for a while, National Geographic at one time had a hashtag that's geography to try to get people to point things out that, might be geography and people don't realize it. And I always thought that was really, that was a good idea because you just do something and you say hashtag that's geography, with that intonation too. So I think that part of this might be in the growing body of accessible badges, micro-credentials, MOOCs and things that are available, whether you're in school or want to learn on your own, that are specific to a lot of fields, might be an area for people to get involved in, either producing them, making them available, or completing them.
So those are our suggestions for getting geography out there. If you have some, of course, implement them. But you can also let us know. We are slowly but surely moving ourselves over to various social platforms that are not the one with the one letter now. Is anybody still on that one?
The one formerly known as Who Cares Because I Don't Go There. I don't think so. I don't think any of us are.
I think we're all off of there now.
I don't think I deleted my
that,
account. So but I don't monitor it. I don't go there. I don't open the site.
Yeah, I will say that the VerySpatial account is still there because I have been waiting for over a week for the Mapstodon account that I requested to be approved. So if you're one of the admins on the Mapstodon.social server, please approve the VerySpatial account.
Maybe we should get some on Reddit. I don't think we get a lot of traffic, but couldn't hurt.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I'll set that up. I'll be the moderator, and we'll put it on Reddit. And then that's a good place for people to give that feedback and go, this is stuff we could do to engage in geography or whatever it is we give to you.
I forget. Are we? So we're okay with Reddit?
Here's the thing. is that I don't know how to articulate this. Are we okay with it? No. Do we find use in it? Yes. So it's kind of like this. It's contradictory.
They're not heinously trying to destroy modern civilization through
social media,
killing a platform that was good by making it useless.
I'm still trying to figure out where all the science communication cartographers and all that community is going to, because it was just very nice to have that all in one spot, and would be nice to have it in one spot again.
I will say there are a lot of lists on GitHub of cartographers, geographers, GIS people, designers, so people who are making lists of their Fediverse accounts that they follow and making those lists available through GitHub or other sources. And you can import these CSVs into your Mastodon, whatever, Fediverse version you're using, and it pops up and you start following them.
Isn't Threads actually?
They say they're going to.
Okay.
But they haven't yet.
Okay, I was curious about that because I read an article about that recently, that it's huge acquisition and then massive drop off. I don't use it as much as I was going to. So
did you say Mastodon, or was that just a Mastodon? Yes. And I just heard Mastodon.
No, it's Mastodon, which is a Mastodon server.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
But that's the one I want to have the VerySpatial account on.
Obviously,
I'm on the, I did it before that existed, so I'm on the regular Mastodon server, but it's Mastodon.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I was like, I want to clarify. Yes.
Yeah. I know I was going to go Thread, but without the desktop thing. That's where I do most of my stuff during the day.
That's the tricky bit I find, is I don't actually want to do it on my phone. And mostly because I have fat thumbs that type badly. And so, for example, if I ever try to type an N, I end up hitting space instead. So it's just easier for me to use an actual honest-to-goodness keyboard. So that's why I prefer the desktop, app.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I tend to type things that I read later and I go, that's not the word I wanted.
Yeah.
No, you should be able to install the Android version and run it on your Windows PC if you have the Android subsystem.
Yes and no. On my desktop computer downstairs that I just recently built back in January, yes, you're absolutely right. On the laptop that we're recording this on, no, I cannot, because it doesn't support Android because I can't upgrade. It's a little bit of fractured space. Hey, big exciting thing. We're going off on a big tangent, so
That's okay.
It doesn't matter. Big exciting thing for me is Windows 11 apparently very soon, maybe this fall, is going to support iMessage. There's going to be an iMessage client. I'm very excited by this because then I can use iMessage for everything, and I don't have to, do Facebook Messenger for some people and iMessage for other people and Google, whatever Google is it chat still? I can't, whatever Google things does now for another person. It's a big pain. I like the unify. So I'm very excited by this.
Well, we'll see if that happens or not. Fingers crossed.
And the other thing I can't believe doesn't exist is Apple Music doesn't have a desktop app for Windows. Isn't it crazy?
It's called iTunes.
No, it is not. And I refuse to use it. And no.
Okay. It is what it's called, by the way, folks, even if he is denying it.
It's not an issue. They don't update it on a regular basis, and it's a terrible product. So, but
it has been since they released it. But that's okay. It is a thing. Of course, if you'd like us to talk about your event, let us know. Here's some that you might want to know about.
Geography 2050 is taking place November 16th through 17th in New York City, New York.
And that, of course, is by the great folks up at the American Geographical Society.
And the theme this year has to do with hazards, if you're involved in that area.
Speaking of hazards, the 6th National Cohesive Wildlife Fire Management Strategy Workshop, that's a mouthful, is taking place November 6th to the 10th in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
State of the Map 2024 is going to be in Nairobi on the 6th through 8th of September 2024. So that just got announced. So if you're looking to plan ahead, plenty of time to get everything set up to head there.
And of course, if you'd like us to add your event to the podcast, send us an email to podcast@veryspatial.com.
If you'd like to reach us individually, I can be reached at sue@veryspatial.com.
I'm Barb at veryspatial.com.
You can reach me at frank at veryspatial.com and almost all social medias at NoJoePar.
I'm available at Kinda Spatial. And of course, if you'd like to find our old contacts and some of our current ones as well, such as emails, head over to veryspatial.com/contacts.
As always,
we're the folks from VerySpatial.
Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.